There are several ways to control how your walls will be framed. First, let's frame the walls. I'll go up here to the General Framing Tools and then Build Framing Child Tool here in the Child Tool palette on the left. Click on this to bring up the Build Framing dialog. I'll go down here to the Wall panel and click on Build Wall Framing to build the framing one time. But I want to have the framing update each time I change a setting, so I'll click on Automatically Build Wall Framing. In this panel you will notice that I can set the default stud thickness and the default stud spacing for all of my walls. Those settings are no longer part of the wall type materials. You can customize each wall to frame differently if you wish. I'll go ahead and click OK here, and you can see that Chief Architect has automatically framed all of my walls with preset defaults for how they are framed. But let's go back into the Build Framing tool. Notice here, when I hover over the tool in the toolbar, you will see Control-Shift-S in the parentheses. That indicates the hotkey that is set up for using the tool without having to go to the toolbar. I will be using this hotkey from now on instead of the tool in the toolbar to open the Build Framing dialog. You have several choices here that control how each of the corners and intersections of the walls will be framed. Right now it is set to frame with a standard connections, which provides for finishing nailing here at the outside corners and inside corners. If we click here on Reduce Stud Connections and click OK, it will produce corners or intersections composed of only 2 studs. If I click the Undo button, this is the standard connection, then Redo to see the reduced stud connections. If we use the laddered connections to add horizontal ladder blocking at the corners or intersections instead of vertical studs, you won't see the result of that in a floor plan view. So let's take a look at the framing overview. Here you can see the ladder blocking at each corner and intersection. Because there are separate settings for each, you can have your intersections framed differently than the corners. When you first open a plan, all of the vertical walls will frame through the corners at the ends. You can change this by, again, going to the Build Wall Framing dialog. We'll change this back to Standard Connections. And here, under Mitered Ends of Angled Walls, you can click on Horizontal Frame Through. This will affect all the walls, not just the angled walls. Now the horizontal walls frame through the intersection, and the vertical walls butt up against them. For angled walls, you have a setting for miter plate ends and rotate end studs. The miter plate ends will miter the ends of the top and bottom plates, which again you will not see in the plan view. If this is unchecked, top and bottom plates will be butted together. Rotate end studs will rotate the studs closest to the miter ends to the angle of the miter, in this case a 45-degree angle. If unchecked, studs will remain perpendicular to the angled walls. Using the settings in the Build Wall dialog will establish defaults for how all of the walls will frame, but you can customize each wall individually to frame how you want it to. For instance, if I wanted to use a 4x6 post in this corner, I could manipulate each framing member by clicking on it, which at first will select the wall, then click on the Tab key to go to the next object. Now I have selected the stud, and I can delete, move, resize each stud individually. When you manually edit wall framing, you will get a dialog open that will let you know that the automatic wall framing tool is turned on, and modifying that framing will turn it off. I'll click Yes, and you can see that I have deleted one of the studs. Then I'll select the one in the corner, hit Tab, and use the edit handles to change the size. Now remember, when you reactivate the Automatic Build Wall tool, it will delete this custom framing and replace it with default framing. Another way to edit the framing for the corners and intersections in individual walls is to use the Edit Wall Layer Intersections tool. When you click on a wall, you will find the Edit Wall Layer Intersections tool here in the Edit toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Click on this tool and then zoom in close so that you can easily see the edit handles for changing the framing. A wall layer intersection edit handle is located at the midpoint of each wall layer. Click and drag a wall layer intersection handle either towards or away from the opposite edge of the intersecting wall. If I drag this edit handle to this side, this wall will frame through, and this one will butt up against it. If I drag it to this side, this one will go through, and this one will butt up against it. If I drag it to the miter position right in the middle, notice that both walls stop at the butting position. This is because here in the Build Framing dialog, I have turned off the setting for Rotate End Studs. When I check this box, notice that both walls have a stud in the miter position in the corner of the wall. This is especially important for angled walls. If I select this angled wall and use the Edit Wall Layer Intersections tool in the Edit toolbar, I will move the Framing Layer Edit handle to the miter position, and you can see that it will frame with two studs mitered together. When you are finished, click the Main Edit Mode Edit button here at the bottom left corner, or press the Escape key. And remember that this is editing an individual wall, so that it will no longer follow some of the defaults set up in the Build Framing dialog. There are many ways to control and edit wall framing as well as other framing components in your Chief Architect plan.